Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you all to talk about a very important concept that's in the core of the sustainability discussion since the end of the last century, and which has been highly useful to establish dialogues between science and decision makers, science and society. It's the concept of ecosystem services. So, and it's really, really important within the framework where the IAI, the Inter-American Institute for Global Change Research, operates. And that's why we are here to talk about that. As you know, I work with the oceans, and then I brought some examples based on the ocean. So I hope you understand and enjoy. I will share my screen, and let's see if it works. Just a second. I think we can go. Well, so we are going to talk about ecosystem services. I am Alexander Turra. I am a professor of the Oceanographic Institute in the University of São Paulo and also the coordinator of the UNESCO Chair for Ocean Sustainability. So I'm working on a daily basis with this concept, with this tool to promote discussions among stakeholders and to promote what we will approach in the end of the presentation, the transdisciplinary approach. So let's go. Uh, I'd like to emphasize that Earth is a complex socio-ecological system, and that the understanding of the complexity of this system based on the components and the processes is crucial for any attempt to manage the system and to plan future scenarios and create and implement actions to promote future scenarios. And this is part of what we can call a civilizatory process that's being forged, that's being structured internationally, considering all the discussions within the UN system. So we can start emphasizing the importance of Rio 92, um, which was the basis of the most important concepts that we are using when we talk about sustainability. We also need to consider the Convention on Biological Diversity, the CBD, which is focusing on the biodiversity aspects, as you can see in the next slides, it's the basement to talk about ecosystem services. This concept was captured by the Millennium Assessment, which tried to create an overview to assess what was going on with the biodiversity and the ecosystem services in the transition of the millennium. And more recently, the Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, which brought together different concepts and practices and learnings and created a framework so that we can operate considering the ecosystem services concepts to work towards sustainability. Before we move on, I would like to emphasize this blue One Health concept or the One Health concepts, because this makes us to understand not only the complexity of the socio-ecological systems, but also the interlinkages they have with all the components based on the processes that operate in these systems. So it's important that we understand that this approach recognizes the interdependence between ocean health or environmental health and the health of humans, animals, plants, and other life forms, as well as the environment and ecosystems, whether distant, nearby, or beneath the water surface, aiming for effective outcomes for the health of all. So behind this description, this definition, we have the concept of planetary homeostasis, which helps us to understand that this system um, is based on processes, on components and processes that are the fundamental um, basement, background, where we can have, in the end, the ecosystem services. And this also brings one important issue, that is the idea behind the ecosystem services, which has a very clear anthropocentric context. And the One Health approach, although thinks about the environment and the animals and the other life forms, it also has a focus on the health of people. And then although this is important, we need to consider that because other organisms may have rights, not only the humans. So let's move on. IPBS, the Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, produced an analytical conceptual framework that's been used. And this is grounded on the importance of biodiversity, considering different levels of organization, from cells and genes to populations, communities, and the ecosystem. And the idea of this framework is to help people that are not necessarily um, biologists, ecologists, to understand the importance of biodiversity. So if you look from the back, you have nature, you have biodiversity and ecosystems. Depending on the color, you have ways different ways to communicate what every box intends to communicate. So nature, biodiversity and ecosystems, and Mother Earth systems of life. We are talking about nature. And going to the left, you have nature's benefits to people, what we normally call ecosystem services or ecosystem goods and services, or nature's gifts. And this causes or has an outcome on the quality of life of people. So we have good quality of life, human well-being, and living in harmony with nature. So this is really important because this is influenced by the changes we cause to the natural environment, and also the decisions that we have in terms of management or governance, or the drivers related to the economic or population dynamics that will influence what happens in different locations. So we have several aspects influencing the quality of life, nature, and how this framework or this system, this socio-ecological system, works. And if we put this in this way, it's clear that we need to understand how we are affecting the environment or the ocean, and how we can change it in a way we will have prosperity, we'll have improvement in our relationship with the environment, and in this way, we may have a better quality of life, not only for humans, but for all uh, living things or living beings in the world. So it's important to understand that there was a kind of evolution in this concept from ecosystem goods and services to nature's benefits to people. So it's a less anthropocentric approach, um, because it's not a service that ecosystem is paying or is now offering to us. So and this goes to and this connects to the other frameworks that are important to help us to understand how we as humans relate to nature in different ways. So let's move on. And this is the Nature Futures framework that consider uh, three different types of relationship um, between nature and, and society. If you look at the green circle, we can see the normal way we relate to society, seeing society in an instrumental way with instrumental values. So nature uh, helping society, nature benefit society. So we are talking about ecosystem services here. But we may also have other types of relationship. And in the blue circle, we have nature as culture. We, society, as one with nature. And this is really important because this has to do with relational values that not necessarily can be valued. So as we are mentioning here in these slides, we are talking about non-material or immaterial values. And we also have nature for nature, considering the intrinsic value of nature that has its own rights. So it's a very important way to think about our limits while species to influence other species um, uh, in the ecosystem. Just let me see if I'm having problems in the recording. Just a second. Yes, I am still here, and I'm also presenting. Yes, yes. So when we talk about ecosystem services, we have a very um, basic classification considering the provisioning services, the regulating services, the cultural services, or non-material or immaterial benefits, and then the supporting services. When we have these, we can organize the services in these different boxes because they have different meanings. So provisioning relates to the products that we obtain from ecosystems. So normally, when we talk about the sea, we think about fisheries, seafood, or water that can be desalinated, and so on. No, we have genetic resources and other things. So but all the bioeconomy is related to provisioning. We also have oil and gas that is explored offshore. The regulating services benefits that that come from the capacity of the ecosystem processes to regulate nature. So we are talking about air quality or water quality, climate regulation, the availability of water, the erosion of country sides of continents, but also of beaches, biological control, pollination, and so on. When we talk about cultural services, we refer to non-material benefits obtained from ecosystems. And here we have all things related to recreation, tourism, inspiration, um, education, science, but also spiritual aspects. We also have the supporting services that are in the backbone, in the basement of all the other three, and are so strongly related to the processes that are in the basement of the services. So we are talking about nutrients in water cycling, primary production, production of oxygen, provisioning of habitats, and soil formation and retention, for example. If you look at the sand beaches of the Brazilian sand beaches that we studied here, we tried to identify these types of services and organize them into these four big categories. So we have provisioning services. We talk about food, raw material to be used, for example, in arts, clean water, which is important for bathing, and so on. Supporting services, we have pollination because in sandy beaches we have plants in the dunes, in the backshore, and we have habitat for species, biological functional control, and also maintenance of genetic diversity. We also have regulating services in terms of local climate and air quality, carbon sequestration and storage, disturbance regulation, and the nutrient regulation and wastewater treatment, and soil retention and erosion prevention, which is really important in the actual scenarios of sea level rise and lack of sand coming from rivers. And also cultural services related to recreation and education, sports and other types of, research and education, and sports and types of recreation, tourism, mental and physical health, which is very important, aesthetic appreciation and inspiration for culture, art, and design, and spiritual experience and sense of place. This all relates to what we can have from nature, and all of these are called services, ecosystem services of different types. CITES is the Common International Classification of Ecosystem Services and helps us to um, integrate the ecosystem services, which is in the middle of this picture, with the processes and functions, the ecosystem processes and ecosystem functions that are in the roots of the services. And then, in the end, the benefits and the values that these services can provide or have. So it's important that we understand that services cannot be provided without ecosystems. And this means biodiversity, this level of organization of biodiversity. So it's really important that we understand the components and the functioning, the processes and the functions of ecosystems so that we will be able to understand the services. And if we have an understanding of the services, we will transpose it to understand what they deliver in terms of benefits and how eventually they can be assessed in terms of value, monetary or not. So in the end, nature is important, the oceans are important, and this picture, this slide shows us this importance in numbers if we are going to value it. So ecosystem services in 2014 were estimated in $125 trillion, and marine and coastal areas summed up to $79 trillion, which was almost exactly the amount of the global GDP, gross domestic product. So if we would pay for everything that the marine and coastal environments ecosystems give us, we will not have money to do that. The maritime economy in Brazil, which is highly dependent on the functioning of ecosystems, so it's related to ecosystem services, sum up to 19% of the Brazilian GDP, which is very important for the Brazilian economy and the prosperity. So in the end, the idea is that the oceans overflow or the ocean overflows and has a kind of transversality in the discussion of sustainability, considering these linkages with other sustainable development goals. So the ocean has a centrality and a transversality, depending on the SDG we are talking about. And these influences, these relationships, have lots to do with the ecosystem services because these are related in the end with the functioning, the components and functioning of the ecosystem services. I look again if the recording is going smoothly. I think it is. Uh-huh. Let's go. So the ocean is a transformative agent of society. Nature is a transformative agent of society. So we need to understand nature and help nature to help us. And the ecosystem service concept or the nature benefit to people for people are really in the center of this discussion. And this can be put into pragmatic approaches like this. The Ocean Health Index, created in 2012 to integrate two important aspects: the environmental quality and the capacity of nature to benefit people. This is the example for Brazil, and we can see that we have different components here which may reveal problems and opportunities for advancing in the sustainability agenda. So if you look at tourism and recreation, mariculture, fisheries, and natural products, we see that there are still opportunities to expand these types of relationships that we have with nature. In terms of aquaculture, we need to expand it. In terms of fisheries, we need to regulate and perhaps fish less uh, to fish more in the future. Natural products relates to the bioeconomy and our capacity to explore biodiversity in a sustainable way. So we can translate the concept of ecosystem services here in a very important tool to guide us to understand how the environment is and what would be the pathways to build futures. This is another way to look at the quality of the environment and our trend to lose or to change ecosystem functioning in a way it will not function normally. né? Normally means having a safe operating space, which is represented by this green sphere in the center of the picture, and that represents um, what we can call the planetary homeostasis or homeostasis, like us. When we see the orange and red expansions of this picture, we are talking about like the fever of the planet, the diabetes of the planet, the high blood pressure of the planet. So we are losing our capacity to maintain the normal functioning of our body or of our ecosystems. So it's really important to capture that because this has a very strong relationship with the functioning of ecosystem services. So this picture represents the planetary boundaries, which are being understood a long time, and how we can interpret these boundaries in terms of uh, the trend to lose environmental or ecosystem resilience. So this study showed that we crossed 6 out of 9 planetary boundaries, and this is not a good message. Okay, and then going to the end, when we look the planetary boundaries and the ocean health index, we need to understand that to create future scenarios and to create futures, we need to have a strong background. And this background, considering the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy, is based on the effective protection of nature. It's also funded and sustained by or grounded on sustainable production of uh, in companies, for example, to have equitable prosperity. These are the three pillars that we need to consider. And if we do not protect effectively the environment, we are going to lose big opportunities to generate income, to generate uh, conditions for people to live better in the future. This is the way the Ocean Brigade is thinking and trying to create a very clear view of what future means in terms of the ocean. We have within the Ocean Decade the goal to have a clean ocean, a healthy and resilient ocean, a productive ocean, a predictable, safe, and accessible ocean, and an inspiring and engaging ocean. And this deals with several aspects that we mentioned before. So we need to understand the environment, we need to think with the environment to have outcomes that will make it productive and bringing quality of life to people. That's what we try to implement in this work that we did in Brazil. This was the first assessment or Brazilian assessment on the biodiversity and ecosystem services of the marine and coastal environments. These two documents, there is a summary for decision makers and the full report. They try to incorporate the framework of the IPBS to have this strategy to think about how nature can relate to society in a very strategic way. In the end, we bring some recommendations for governance, for uh, moving moving on and changing the reality that was captured in this assessment. Options that can be considered by decision makers. And that's the powerful or the power of this structure, of this framework, of this way of thinking, to understand things, to put these things in a way that decision makers will understand, so they will understand the value of nature, the importance of the ocean, so that they will care and will help us to change the actual reality. And this has to do with one aspect that's very, very important for IAI, which is the transdisciplinary approach that integrates different types of knowledge. The knowledge, named the orientation knowledge, based on what we need to go, the transformation knowledge based on on how we need to change, and the systems knowledge, which has to do with understanding of the ecosystem's functioning. So if we have these three knowledges, integrating them with the process knowledge, we will have the opportunity to promote co-design processes of governance that will help us to dialogue and based on the understanding of the functioning of nature, create possibilities to for different futures. So knowledge is important, and in the case of the ocean, we have this ocean literacy concept that helps us to understand our impacts on the ocean, how we influence the ocean, and how the ocean influences us. And in the end, trying to pack all these concepts and ideas, I'd like to bring this concept of nature-based solutions, which is grounded on the concept of ecosystem services, on the biodiversity, and on the functioning, on the processes related to the ecosystems. So we need to understand that we can, we can use biodiversity to promote human well-being, and helps us to fight against circumstances that are creating problems like the planetary crisis of the climate, of biodiversity loss, and of pollution, including the planetary crisis related to poverty. So this is being used in different ways for companies, for startups, as innovation solutions to promote changes in harmony, or considering nature benefits in a way we will bring different conditions to create futures when we have this type of knowledge. That's why it's really important to understand biodiversity functioning, and also the ecosystem service, so that we can have them as our allies to change our reality for a better future. So in synthesis, the idea is that ecosystem services are an important component of a strategic and comprehensive framework to build futures in harmony with nature. And that's the point I would like to bring to you, so that we can exercise this in our daily activities, professional activities, but also as citizens. Okay? Thank you very much, and hope to see you soon.